Hello and welcome. We are going to be sitting here and looking at 8 student games that were made in a course about making video games in a 10-week period, and we're going to dig into a little bit about how that happened. But first, can you introduce yourself for everybody?
Absolutely. My name is Erik Sjöstrand, and I have been one of the teachers working on this course. There are 6 disciplines of students working on this course, and I have been course responsible for the design students. And I've been working here at the University of Skövde since 2010, and prior to that I was actually a student here, so it was, I believe it was 10 or 9 years ago when I myself attended this course, so it's been really nice to see the progress.
So give us a little bit of background. These teams aren't just set loose to make a game in 10 weeks. What is, this is coursework.
Yeah.
So how is that organized? What kind of support is given to these students?
Yeah. During their first years, these are second year students, but during the first year they have a course called Game Development 1, and this is Game Development 2. So in that course we talk a lot about the group dynamics and how to plan a project and stuff like that, and we teachers are pretty supportive in that course. But in this course we like to set them free a bit more, so to speak. So we try to hold their hand when they want it and provide support, but really this project is for the students, so to speak, so they can try their wings.
So you've gone through this process a few times with students.
Yeah.
I'm super curious about what are some of the very common mistakes that you can see coming a mile away and that maybe sometimes the teams don't listen to you quite as much as they should.
Well, in this course, at the beginning of the course, we have a project goal seminar where we discuss the goals of each team, what they want to achieve at the end of the course. So prior to this seminar, we teachers always sit and discuss, and we say, well, this isn't going to work at basically every game. The scope is too big. And that is one of the things which most groups realize. So they scale down and they scale down, and at the end they always manage to impress us. So they make great games, but usually a bit smaller than they thought at the beginning.
So that's kind of the advice that you can give even before you look at anything. Scale down, find things to cut, keep the scope manageable. Is there anything that tends to pleasantly surprise you as you play through these games, or maybe this year's slate of titles?
Yeah, I think the aesthetic parts of video games has really gone up recent years. I don't know if it's because of graphical improvements in the game engines, or if it's because the students have studied the aesthetics more, or if it's just that video games in our days doesn't necessarily depend as much on technical advancement. Instead you can focus on other matters which make the game look really nice. So that's one of the things that I have seen gone up like this.
Do you see many trends in what students like to tackle when it comes to these games? Is there a line you see running through many of them?
Yeah, there is. I believe games focused on narrative has been more common in recent years, and that's probably because we have a game writing program right now, and so games which may not be games in the traditional sense of the word are getting more common. So that's a theme that I've seen.
I'm really curious how similar you think this process of creating a game in 10 weeks is. Is that similar to creating a real game upon graduation? Do you think that the skills you learn carry over to the full industry?
I definitely think that the skills carry over, and but of course we have things that differs from a real project. One of the things is that students can decide a lot of what they want to do. They do not have in the same sense someone saying, okay, do that and do that and do that. So we think that's a great asset for them to, if they want to try this, they can do that now and have the freedom to do so, which may sometimes be good and sometimes be bad, because sometimes it might have been better if they had a more cohesive look at how to do things. But as a whole, I think it's a great thing that they can do this.
So it feels like it's fairly easy to point out what students learn in making a game in 10 weeks. That's an intense experience to go through. watching groups of students do this a few times, what have you learned? What have these projects taught you about game development?
Well, I think the main, since these are pretty small ideas, of course, well, some ideas are big, but if you want to do something that's playable in 10 weeks, you have to have a core idea. You have to know something that you want to do. And the games that have been most successful in my eyes has this vision that they really want to push. So this is what matters in our game, and we have to focus on that in order to make something playable and enjoyable and memorable. And I also think that is true for game development as a whole today, as the industry and the process has become more democratic. A lot of more people can do games, and more and more games are released. So in order to have something unique and which will stand out from all this gray matter, then you have to have something that pops.
What would you say is the goal for the students in making these games? If they say they learned this, and you can walk away saying, okay, we've done our job here, what do you think that would be?
I think, actually, I think it's really hard to do a game in 10 weeks and not learn anything. So we don't have to do very much, but I think the thing we want to the students to carry with them is like, okay, if I were to do this again, I wouldn't have done it this way. So learning from their mistakes, even if the games are really good, then I think that's a thing that they need to have. And I don't think that differs from other game projects either. When you watch like post-mortems from Game Developers Conference, it's like those are professionals that have been making games for a lot of years, and they're still said, okay, if we were to do this again, we would do it different. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's anything about this program you like talking about that people don't ask you about. Are there things that you think is really interesting about how these students put these games together that isn't immediately obvious to someone like me looking on the outside?
Yeah, this year we actually had a theme for the games, which so the process of choosing which games were developed. We have 8 games. Was that the students could pitch their games, but in order to pitch their game, they had to have a target group in mind for playing this game. And the theme of this game has been inclusiveness, so they needed to have some way of including a group of players that normally wouldn't play a game like this. So that's a thing that perhaps isn't apparent when looking at the games, but they should have some idea of, okay, this is a group of players which wouldn't normally play a game like this, so we thought about that.
Was there something you were hoping to see in the student games when you picked that theme, or were you just hoping to be surprised at how other people interpreted it?
Well, a thing that is a bit problematic, I think, in the game industry, but also at the university here, is that, how do you say it, the students attending the course and people in the game industry are mostly white men.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have the female students have gone up, and which is a great thing, but they're basically young people, so and come from a similar background, playing a lot of games. So a thing that we have seen is that people tend to make games that they would enjoy themselves, and that's great. So of course, you can do that, but we think that you learn more if you try to do something and look outside of your own comfort zone a bit. So that's a thing that we have tried to do with this theme.
Absolutely. So we're going to get started looking at the games, and for the very first one, we have a trailer for a title called Pillow Fight. So here we go.
What happens when we put our heads against our pillows at night? They collect the dreams of humans, using them to fight each other. Enter the dream world. sleep tight, and pillow fight.
It's great, right? The laughter.
Okay, so we're going to talk about pillow fight a little bit, and it's important to know that this is not a pillow fight. We're not hitting each other with pillows. The pillows themselves are fighting. It is a battle of pillows.
Yeah.
So, where did that joke originally come from? What was the genesis of that idea?
Yeah. So from the beginning, we had a kind of a different idea for what the game was going to be. We still had like this. We wanted to make a party brawling game, fast and tense with grappling hooks. But it was going to be called Gorserk and cyberpunk, futuristic, and all of that. And then we had the idea that we were going to use a modifier where you would fight with pillows, like a regular pillow fight. And I kind of latched on to the idea of being with pillows and fighting. And we just felt that it kind of tied into the entire theme a lot better. It felt like the game felt more whole if we used pillows instead. And I mean, who doesn't just look at the silly pillows? It's a lot more fun.
So, knowing that the characters were going to be pillows, did that change how you looked at the combat for the rest of the game?
I think the gameplay still remains the same from the very beginning, what we wanted to do. But how we look at violence, for example, is a completely different thing from what the original plan was.
Yeah, definitely. So, and we could use a lot more, like have the pillows explode in huge clouds of feathers and all that. It just made the game a lot more fun to watch, to look at.
So are we ready? Okay, I actually got a chance to play the game, and we're going to take a look at how that went.
Today we're playing Pillow Fight, which is our party game for 2 till 4 players. And in the game you play as a pillow, as you can see there on the screen. And you're armed with a sword and a grappling hook.
So we're not fighting with pillows?
No, we
are the pillows.
Yeah, we are the pillows.
The fight is what happens between us, not with us.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a lot of work for a silly conceit. How far will you go for a silly name? All the way.
All the way.
All the way.
Yeah. So now you join by pressing A, and then you can switch colors on your pillows with the D-pad.
Okay. Oh, you can grapple each other!
Yeah. Where are you going?
Here we go.
What just happened?
Oh!
Grapple each other!
Yeah. Where are you going?
I know I'm supposed to be providing commentary, but this is taking up just about all of my attention at this point.
Well done.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it just conceptually, it really doesn't have anything to do with the fact they're pillows. That is just clearly, it's just the silly name.
Yep.
I like it. I mean, the good thing about local multiplayer games is you can, it's a yes or no question, right? You can tell when it's working or when it's not.
Definitely.
And this grabbed me really quick. That was a whole lot of fun. So thank you very much.
Oh, no problem, no
I
problem.
really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And like, okay, so obviously that went pretty well.
Yeah.
Like after 10 weeks of what had to be really intense work, how much of a relief is it to have someone like me come in completely cold and go from 0 to having fun like that? Like what is that feeling when it's working clearly in the room?
I don't know if I can describe it properly. Like, these 10 weeks have been amazing. We've worked so hard to do this. We had a clear goal to create a good game in 10 weeks. And it may seem like a simple challenge, but it's really not. 10 weeks is nothing when it comes to game development.
Yeah. I remember we returned to the classroom like afterwards and we were like, he enjoyed the game. He actually really enjoyed the game.
Amazing.
I mean, we think it's funny because we've played it a lot and we've tried with people. We had like game tests with the other classes and all of that, and you see them playing the game and having fun, and it's really rewarding, actually.
So I'm always curious when I play a game like that where all the mechanics seem to be working really well, it's really easy to get lost in and to have a lot of fun. Did you find that early and then it was a matter of adding details and polish? Or was there a lot of iteration before you kind of, found the fun, as it were? How long did that take?
I mean, we started working because before this, you create a pitch for the game, right? So we started working back in November with another prototype for the game where we kept iterating and having ideas and creating all these. Yeah. Pretty early on, we found that we wanted the game. We had like this lead word, chaotic. We want the game to create chaos, and so it has to be simple and it has to be chaotic. So we came up with these modifiers and we tried them out and we iterated a lot actually. Yeah. So when we got to the project, we just had to do it. We had to make the game again, make it really good, and so it's been a lot of polish. And I mean, for this project, I guess quite a bit of iteration too.
Yeah, it's definitely been an iterative process.
So we've watched the video. Everyone had a good time. We've talked about how it feels right now, but everything isn't always perfect. So I'm curious, looking at the game from this perspective. What do you think is the game's biggest flaw as it exists right now?
Oh,
it's a difficult one, right?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. The biggest flaw, readability maybe. One of our goals is to have it appeal to an audience that isn't necessarily very experienced, right? And with these modifiers and all the visual effects everywhere, they're needed because of the gameplay feel. Like, we want the game to look very good, but it also affects the readability of the game, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes there are a lot of times where you hear players go, "Where am I?" And I think that's an issue. I think that's something that it's really hard to fix as well, with attempting to balance these juiciness effects and the readability of the game.
What do you think the game's biggest flaw is right now?
I kind of agree with the readability, but I also enjoy the fact that sometimes it's hard to read because that kind of ties into the whole chaos and the experience of it. To me, I think the biggest flaw is that we don't have enough modifiers. I would see a lot more things in the game, like even more options to create chaos and having it really be completely chaotic.
Yeah. I'm curious, since you knew the playtest was coming up, you probably had a lot of time to think about it. What were you afraid was going to happen in your worst case scenario as you were playing your game on camera with someone who has never played it before? Did you have a worst case scenario that you were afraid was going to happen?
Maybe not planned, but I mean, the game doesn't start, it crashes, you think it sucks. I mean, there are a lot of things that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, personally, I didn't allow myself to think that much about it, so I didn't really get nervous. We just got there.
Sure.
Then we had the playtest. But yeah, I mean, getting it working, and if you didn't understand the controls, that would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
Because that's our main goal. We want people to get into the game really fast and just start playing.
What about the game as it is now are you most proud of? What do you look at when you play and go, we nailed that aspect of it? This is something we did really, really, really well.
I think player feedback is something that I'm really proud of. Not necessarily that I've worked with that aspect, but I think when you hit someone, you get the feedback in so many ways. The controllers shake, the sound, the visual effects, all of that. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and me, I'm just I really like the fact that you can take one person who hasn't played the game, you put them in a chair, and then 10 seconds later they're screaming or laughing or something. You can see the reaction.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I think we've captured the game feel we wanted to capture really well, and I'm proud of that.
What do you think is the hardest lesson you learned while playtesting? Was there ever a time that someone from the outside came in and played and you were like, oh gosh, we have to fix this thing, or we didn't see that coming at all?
So, no two persons can ever agree on a controller scheme for this game, it seems.
Yeah.
There's always some form of opinion, no, it shouldn't be like this, it should be like this. It's been really difficult trying to find the perfect controller scheme. We basically went with multiple buttons do the same thing because it pleases the most amount of people.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that. And from playtesting, it's sometimes you see people, they kind of don't grasp what's happening in the game. We felt that we had to somehow actually make them understand what to do, and some people didn't enjoy it because it's not their type of game, and I mean that's fine.
And you, okay, for starters, how large is the team?
We're 19 people.
19
the
people.
game. Yeah.
So when you have 19 people working on a local multiplayer game,
Yeah.
I sincerely doubt everyone came to work every morning knowing exactly what had to be done and the way to do it. What was the stickiest argument or disagreement you had within the team that was the hardest to get past and settle in a way that everyone felt good about?
Yeah. I think it depends on what areas you've been working on. I mean, for my example, I worked on the music and implementing sound in music, and actually getting, like, nailing how we want the music to sound. That's been, me and the other musician, we had a lot of arguments back and forth. We had a clear vision, both, but we kind of interpreted it differently, so we couldn't come to a conclusion, kind of. And we had a lot of discussions back and forth. We had some retrowave music, now we have this, and I mean, in the end, I'm really proud of it, though.
What do you think was the trickiest argument that you had during development?
Probably whether or not the missile in the game should move in depth as well as on the width and height, right? It's hard to explain, but anyways, it was a discussion about basically nothing that went on for a long time, and we decided to keep it the way it is.
What do you think about that missile, that special attack where the missile tracks you? Why did that detail lead to such a long argument during development? What about that did people feel defensive about?
I don't know. I mean, people in our group have strong opinions about most things, and I think that's a good thing for the most part. But when it comes to these sort of almost non-issues, it really becomes quite tedious.
Yeah.
Was there anything during development that you thought was going to be a big argument that you thought wouldn't make it through the rest of the team, that everyone just went, oh yeah, that's fine, and you were just relieved and got to put it in the game?
I would say the grappling hooks.
Yeah?
Because if we hadn't had that idea from the beginning, we probably would have scrapped it. If we came to the group and we're like, oh no, we're doing this party fighting game, platformer, and we want grappling hooks. If people hadn't played our prototype before and tried it and seen that it worked out, it probably wouldn't have even made the game. And I think that it's an integral part of the gaming experience.
Yeah, definitely, I have to agree with that. If we didn't have our proof of concept from the earlier prototype, no way, no go.
Yeah.
What about the grappling hooks was the hardest thing to put in? It seems, from someone who doesn't have a background in game development, it seems like that's a fairly straightforward thing. And the longer I do this job, the more I realize the more straightforward and easy something looks, the more nightmarish it had to have been on the other side.
So from an implementation perspective, it wasn't super challenging to do. But from a balancing perspective, it was really, really difficult. Balancing the values, how the physics should work around it, something that was changed. The last time we changed it was like last week, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And we had that, like, this really funny interaction before when we didn't have, like, you couldn't die when you went too far up, and so you could grapple each other and create like this tornado just going up forever. That was a lot of fun. I mean, we've had a lot of fun just testing the game, trying to break it and see what happens.
It's always interesting to me because when I play these games, you come up with a list of questions, but you can never know what you don't know. So what is like a really good story from development that no one would ever think to ask about? Something that sticks out in your mind is like, this is part of making this game that I'm always going to remember. But there's no hook while someone's playing a game to think to ask about it.
No, that's a really difficult one, actually, because it's kind of a straightforward game, right?
Yeah. I don't know, actually. A clear moment. I mean, we put the Epic Sax guy on every computer once.
I
even recorded it.
I remember. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Shooting Stars song.
Oh, I'm aware.
Yeah. So I put that in as an Easter egg where there was going to be like a 20% chance that it was going to play when you started the game.
Yeah.
And I did the maths wrong, so there was an 80% chance that it played. So for a week, we just had Shooting Stars playing in our game.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing the game.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And right now, we're going to look at a trailer for By the Rock as our next game.
These mountains, these rocks, they watch over us. They protect and give shelter to the animals that live in the forest, even us orcs. The rivers flow in silence, with fish lurking below the surface. I've roamed and hunted here my entire life. Any nearby rivals have since long been defeated. I am a half-orc, and I live with other orcs in a nearby village. But something has come up, something I must keep secret from them. I'm not sure how to deal with this. If I'm discovered, everything might come to an end. But she must not suffer the fate of my father.
All right, and we are here live with some members of the development team of By the Rock. So can you introduce yourselves very quickly?
Yeah, my name is Amanda, and I am the lead writer of this project.
And I'm Laila, and I'm creative director.
I'm really curious about what discussions were like in the team when you were deciding who was going to talk about the game. Was that something you kind of knew that the two of you were going to do? Was there discussions? Was there anyone who just absolutely did not want to do it?
Well, it was kind of decided immediately that I would go on because I've been creative director, and so I've had a lot of say in what happens creatively.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And then we wanted someone to represent the story as well.
Yeah,
She's perfect for that.
exactly.
Great. Are we ready to cut to the video? Okay, and I got a chance to play the game, and we are going to take a look at how that went. All right, I am here with Laila, and we are about to play By the Rock. Tell me just a tiny bit about the game before we start.
This is a third-person adventure game. It's centered around a love story between two women. Ugra, who's a half-orc, and Hanaya, who is a human, who's lost in the woods.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah.
They shower us with gifts under the promise of safety.
Okay, so am I following him? Is he following me?
I don't know if I should give you hints or...
Yeah, I don't know if what exactly I'm looking for in terms of mushrooms. I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out at me.
Try to explore, new areas. Now you're going back to the area you were before.
I mean, it's a third-person adventure game, so I'm thinking Zelda, Skyrim, that sort of thing. Those are kind of the analogs I'm thinking of right now.
My arm hurts really bad.
Sure, this human woman is dying, but I'm out here for mushrooms, and I gotta prioritize. I found the moss. Now I'm never gonna be able to find the woman ever again. We're gonna go get the mushrooms. And I am gonna share the mushrooms. That was a callback. I feel really happy about how that was set up. I always feel like my terrible sense of direction makes adventure games last like 5 times longer than they're supposed to. Is it up here?
I love that you've been walking in every direction but the one.
I feel like am I going back here?
Yeah, you've now
right?
kind of been walking in circles. Yeah, I think you're gonna get back to
the woman didn't die. I feel like I found the mushrooms. I gave them to someone else. I feel like I fulfilled my minimum expectations as a not terrible person in playing that demo.
You did great.
Thank you so much. All right, well, thank you so much. That was a whole lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. So, I'm really curious what the initial conversations were like about the character and the story. Because with a narrative game like this, that's where you begin, right? So what was the genesis of this idea?
Well, it was you.
Well, kind of. We took. I'm writing a book, kind of. So we took the beginning, the very first, chapters, and we wanted to make that into a game. So I just took all that. I actually took the entire book and I just dumped it on the game writers. It's like, can we make something great out of this? And you took over.
Yeah, we stayed real close to the source material, of course, we changed the course of a few things to make it more interesting as a game and to have the two main characters interact more with each other. So that was the biggest change we did, but we stayed close to what Lila had written before.
What was the largest challenge about taking something that already existed as a narrative and making it a fun game? Like, was there any parts of that that were more of a struggle than you expected it to be when you began?
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was because in the beginning, Ogra is supposed to meet Hanaya in the forest and then directly take her to the village where Magnet meets. But we wanted them to have this interaction and also be more with orc culture to get that. So that was the biggest challenge to see how can we make these two happen at the same time. And we did by letting Hanaya stay in the forest for another 3 days, as it will be as we have planned. So then you can have more interaction with the orcs, but also with Hanaya before you take her to the village, the human village.
One of the things that I've heard from so many people talking about this program, and we heard it at the beginning of these interviews, was kind of the blanket advice is to cut down.
Yeah.
To limit scope, cut down, get to the heart of the game and really focus on making that good. What during the 10 weeks did you have to cut that just broke your heart? What is something you ultimately lost that you felt terrible you couldn't get in there?
Well, we cut two major things. Yeah. We cut the orc village, and we cut hunting combat thing, where we were supposed to throw spears at deer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was kind of heartbreaking to remove, but at the same time we wanted to really focus on making the forest feel vibrant and nice to be in. So we didn't want to, just spread ourselves too thin. Instead, make a nice core. So even though it was heartbreaking, I felt like it was the right thing to do.
Definitely.
But I mean, it's easy to say the words orc village.
Yeah.
But when you really dig into that, you think multiple characters.
Yep.
They have to be doing things.
Yep.
They have to have some kind of even basic AI governing their characters. There has to be line of dialogue. You have to write barks for everybody.
Yep.
Once you cut that, even though it was really hard, did you kind of feel a sense of relief? Feel like, oh God, we don't have to do any of that anymore?
Yeah, I mean, we writers, we had already written the dialogue, right? So for us it was more like, oh, it's not going to be there. But I bet it's different for you.
Yeah, it was probably, the graphic side of the development team who had, a large amount of work to do. And we were like, okay, well, if we skip that, we skip all the things that need to go into the village. We need, tiny pots, we need a lot of small things, but still there's a massive amount. We can just put that aside and focus on making, vegetation and terrain nice. That was, that was a sense of relief.
At the beginning of the project, was there anything you thought was going to be really easy to do that once you started creating it ended up being immensely more difficult than you saw coming?
The forest, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, but I always, had the forest was going to be difficult because, leaves and stuff. But the characters was kind of, it was more difficult than I imagined because we had a pipeline of, designing, and then went to 3D, and then another 3D stop, and texturing, and animation. And if something went wrong, we had to go back to the beginning. And so it was, slightly more complicated than we anticipated. But in the end, we worked it out. So it was nice, but yeah.
I'm curious, you say this was based on a book you were working on.
Yeah.
You were the writer for the project, or I'm a writer. I'm not sure if you were the writer.
No.
Is it harder to write dialogue and then deal with voice acting than it is to just write something down in a narrative? Was that a more iterative process than you expected, or did that go about according to plan?
I'd say it went about according to plan, but we wanted voice acting, so we had to start earlier than we probably should, so we didn't have that much time to test it. But I think it still went all right, I'd say.
Yeah, I was very pleased, and also with finding the voice actors.
Yeah,
we had
definitely.
the girl doing Hanaya's voice, doing a lot of it from a distance.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I was just very pleased to hear voices for the characters that I've been writing about and we've been talking about. So, oh, that's really neat.
Yeah, was there a little bit, were you taken aback when you heard the final in the game with everything working together and see the writing come to life?
Yeah, it was definitely, oh wow, this looks great, you know? And I imagine it's even more for you.
Yeah.
Since you have been working on this for a while.
Kind of, you know, it's amazing and a bit strange because it's oh, it come from us.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, hearing her speak and especially seeing the move, you know, seeing like her hair bob and her shoulders move, like, you know, I'm still amazed. That's, you know, the fun thing about making games, you know, seeing it for real.
So the portion I played took place in a fairly limited size, but even then, and this could possibly be me, I had a little bit of trouble figuring out where to go next. Was that something that you saw coming in play testing? And how much of a struggle is it to try to funnel the player to where they need to go to trigger the next scene in a game where the environments can be this open?
The thing is, we wanted people to, you know, explore. We wanted to give them a space where they could, you know, run around. They don't necessarily have to go straight to a place. It's not a linear experience that way. Actually, in the playtesting, it went. I think all of the people went pretty straightforward to the next place. A few people, you know, tried to go on their way, found that okay, this doesn't work. But you know, I think we have very nice game designers working on that.
Yeah, we have a few landmarks that really helps.
Yeah.
Like a white stone, so you know kind of which way you're gonna go. So it's our designers have our design team has done a very good job, I'd say.
Now, the theme of the course was inclusiveness.
Yeah.
So how did you work that into the game, and how early did that hook go into the game?
Well, it's always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we, you know, based on the story, and when I was writing the story, I was very, you know, consciously making decisions to, you know, I did the calculation of how many female characters do I have in the story, for example. Do I only have, you know, men being ship captains and stuff like that? Now we don't have ship captains in the actual game, but still that's the narrative we took and put into our game. We also did, you know, like a document of our values and stuff like that, what we wanted to portray and not portray in the game. So I think throughout the whole process we talked and we had a lot of, you know, energy put into not accidentally creating more stereotypes or, you know, perpetuating that.
We've been actively thinking about it every day.
So, looking back on everything now and going through this experience and having us do the playtest and doing this interview, what do you think is the thing you are most proud of about the game now that you can kind of look back and you're at the end of the process?
Well, I'd say the whole how it came together, because it can be hard sometimes to see how the final product will look, and I think it looks really great, and I think that's the best part of it to see.
And similarly, I think that, you know, learning so much. I think that we all, as a group with 20 people, it's a lot of people, and I think we all learned, you know, a great deal of things.
Is there any kind of last takeaway you have from the game that you wanted to get out there before we end our discussion?
Do you have any? A last message. You know, I play the game and I hope you enjoy it and you know, enjoy the story.
All right, well, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time. I had a great time with the game. Thank you.
Good.
And right now we are going to take a look at the trailer for Bleeper. So enjoy.
Hello?
Piotr, it's me.
Oh, hello, boss.
Have you found a new sensor yet?
Not yet. I'm reading the applications right now.
Do I need to remind you how important it is that we find a new sensor as soon as possible?
No, but boss, I...
Piotr, we need to keep the truth from the people.
Yes, boss. In fact, I might have found the right person right here.
Excellent, Piotr.
Hello and welcome to Darmania's one and only television station. My name is Pyotr Shavenkov, and I will be your supervisor.
So that was Bleeper, and that was one of the more original games I think we saw in this whole thing. And was that? Did you start knowing that you were going to have? And we're going to get to the playtest in just a second. Was there always the idea that you're going to have hardware to go along with the game?
Well, not really. Actually, that sort of came along after a while because our main designer wanted to make like a peripheral because that always stands out when you're sort of at cons and stuff, and it also really adds to the immersion, as you know if you played with using the button.
Yeah. How early did you settle on this concept? Like, did you go through a bunch of ideas? Was this something that was really easy to settle on before you started?
Well, Gunnar pitched the idea, and we all liked the idea and the basic concept, so we built from there. So we designers came up with the gameplay concept and the graphics, the idea of the graphic design and so forth. So it all went rather smoothly in the concept phase.
All right, great. Well, I got a chance to play it. We took some video, and we're going to look at that right now. We'll see how it went. I'm so excited. And look at your shirts! All of the teams have shirts. This is great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So at what point do I get to hit the button? Like, this is just, I just want to, let's get to the button as quickly as possible.
The whole game is controlled through the button.
This is so exciting. And it's like, it really does have that really good press to it. It feels like it's got a little bit of weight.
With these cables, you can just change practically any button. So this is space, click, and arrows. The game is about censorship, but in a humoristic tone. News segments or journalists that interviews workers, you have to censor those segments.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
A Romanian spy was discovered today when it tried to shop.
So you have one pass at censoring things?
Yeah. So
okay.
you can listen how many times you want, but you only get one chance at censoring.
Okay. So it automatically loops?
Yeah, automatically loops.
Okay, so if I'm ready to start censoring, I hold this down.
Yeah.
And then I hold it down as long as I want the beep to happen.
Yes.
Okay.
A Romanian spy was discovered today when it tried to shoplift from a convenience store and was caught on camera. According to the spy, the Romanian scientist has been trying to create their own chocolate. But don't have
it's really hard to hit it before, even if you know it's coming.
This was awful. Just awful.
Okay, he agrees that I did a really bad job.
So, Svetlana, my first question is about censorship. What do you think
Yeah.
about censorship?
About what?
About censorship.
Sorry,
Excellent work on that last assignment, eh?
Nailed it. I feel that was the easiest one, but I finally got a win. All right, thanks so much for letting me play the game, Lydia. That was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for playing it.
Game over. You didn't do your job correctly. Try again.
It's always funny to play these games knowing that, like, at no point at that playtest at all did I do very well. Just to let everyone know, we're doing this live and we're paying attention to what you're saying. So if you want to join this conversation on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, the hashtag is HISLive2017, no spaces. That's HISLive2017. So send us some questions, talk to each other. We would absolutely love to have you be a part of this. So I loved playing this game. It was super great to have that peripheral and have the really good button press. There were two aspects of it that really played to the theme of inclusion. It's very easy to manipulate that button, so if you have mobility issues, and you said that you could also play completely by the audio cue. So walk us through what that took.
Well, the theme from the start was that people with visual impairment should be able to play the game, but we also didn't want to exclude people who can see And we also wanted our graphic department to have something to do. So we just wanted to make sure that people without visual impairment didn't have an upper hand in the gameplay. So no score counter or graphical interface that indicate how well you did. That would all be done through audio cues and the ambient sound and so forth.
Was that something that was easy to implement, or did it take a lot of iteration to figure out how exactly those interactions were going to take place with the player?
It took several iterations. The basic gameplay was an interesting challenge as a designer to come up with, because we came up with this really amazing creative ideas, but realized that it required graphical interfaces. So we had to work around that, and it was a very interesting challenge. But the pling and the beep sound, all those...
I'm sorry, the beep sound? That angry buzzer letting us know just how much we let everyone down?
Yeah.
You describe it as a beep sound.
Well, I want to be kind. Not so harsh, but the very angry buzzer sound and the very kind pling sound. It came later on. It wasn't in the first iterations. It wasn't the first phase. It came later on, so it took several iterations.
I'm curious if playtesting changed how the game was written. Was it hard to write this dialogue, trying to give the player clues about what needed to be censored and what was probably safe? Like, how do you set that up so it's less ambiguous than it probably would be in normal conversation?
The dialogue got several trials. The writers wrote first one manuscript, then we recorded it and listened to it, and game writing worked with it, and the audio department also worked with it. And then they made the required changes and recorded it again. So also that took several iterations and tries.
So I feel like I had a ton of fun with the game. The visuals worked really well, the writing was smart, the concept was funny, there was a lot of good jokes in there. Now we're gonna get to the negative stuff. Playing the entire game, I kept waiting to hear the version of the broadcast that I censored, with the goofy beeps that like didn't need to be there versus the times it was like super clear that needed to be there, and that's not in the game. I felt like you did this amazing job setting the joke up, but we never got to see the punchline. Was that ever discussed during the making of the game, that there has to be some way to let the player hear what he or she was censoring with all of their interactions complete in it?
We have gotten that comment before, and we thought about implementing it, but when we realized that we were so far into the project, it would take time from what needed to be finished first. So it's something we have written up to add later on in later development, but it's lacking now. But we're planning on adding it.
And the really interesting thing about that, and why it keeps coming up in conversation, I was having lunch with some other people who had played the game earlier today, and it's such an amazing way to promote the game. Like, you're creating this piece of content that you could upload to YouTube or send in an email, and just as someone who deals with pitches on covering games every day, it was frustrating that your game was like creating this thing that other people could share, and then it wasn't in there. It's like, once it's added, I think it's such a gift to have a concept that kind of implicitly adds viral content every time someone plays. It's a really neat aspect of the game's design. That being said, you had such a strong concept. We saw you walk through how the button was created, and it actually seemed relatively simple. That didn't take up a ton of time. What about the game did you think was going to be simple that ended up being significantly harder once development actually began?
Well, the 2D animations were a ton of fun, but those sort of became our bottleneck. We thought the audio would be our bottleneck, but we managed to get access to the studio and recording studio, so often that it actually didn't. We could record it several times, so it didn't become our bottleneck. Instead, it was the animations, and yeah.
Yeah, and with me having to make music for the game, I had some trouble there, because how do you make music for a game that's supposed to maintain this sort of clarity in its audio? And that was a real challenge for me. So there's not a ton of music in the game, but what is there is sort of there to add some flavor.
So when you say that the animations that we're watching and that we're censoring was the bottleneck, when you're waiting for those to come in, what does the rest of the team do? How do you manage the fact that there are people who are waiting to work on the game and you're waiting for this next part before you can take a step forward?
The writing and audio were very quickly recorded, but it needed work with effects and the filters. So the boss line sounded it came from a phone, and also the ambient sounds. And, so sound and music could work on those, and writing also took care of the PR, so they could take time to plan PR event on Facebook and on Indie DB.
Yeah. So there were always these little added sort of flavor bits to sort of implement into the game. That there were always a ton of those, which we could like focus on instead of the actual implementation of the core game.
Was there something specific that inspired you to tackle government censorship for this game? Like, how early did that aspect of the story and the design come into it?
Well, I had the actual idea dates back to like a year ago, maybe, and the way I saw this idea was sort of, it just kept getting more and more topical, which is sort of interesting. But with the recent outcry of fake news and the likes, I felt like this just kept lending itself to make a funny game about. So it was always there, the dictatorship and this sort of hard topic to tackle. It's always been at the very core of the game, I think.
Well, I'm very glad that my country's hardships could provide you the grist for a student project. That makes me very happy.
Thank you.
I'm curious if there was an argument that during the development of the game you won, that looking back you think you should have lost. That actually I really fought for this, but going the other way would have been better.
We actually had a very calm group. We didn't have everything was done with a discussion. So it's more like we had a slightly heated debate about adding something, and it usually ended in all parts being okay with the decision made.
Yeah, it's almost slightly disconcerting the way our group worked, because you're supposed to argue, and we sort of didn't.
Yeah.
So we had a very, very clear path, and we sort of followed it.
Well, I just want you to take a second to appreciate that, because that is a very rare thing and noteworthy in this sort of game development. Yeah. Thank you so much for letting me play the game. That was a whole lot of fun. And next, we are going to look at a trailer for a game called Remaining.
It's all true, the things you've heard.
Nailed it. Thank you so much.
I've seen the fiend that lurks within the walls of Castle Vendrian.
Wait, is that?
A being with no compassion, a creature of pure evil. You won't see it until it's too late. It will already have lured its way into your mind. Your very soul. What happened in that castle is beyond comprehension. If you value your life, don't disturb what remains.
right, here we go. Can you take just a brief second to introduce yourself in the studio?
Yeah, sure. My name is Björn Franzén, and this is Marcus Rutit, and we are from Lagom Entertainment, and we have been working on Remaining, a horror game where you play the horror, essentially.
How long did it take for you to come up with that tagline? Was that something that you practiced? We need to have some punchy way of describing the game.
I guess it just came up someday when we were thinking about just what is our game really, and yeah, it is a horror game, but it's not really a horror game, and you play the horror, so yeah.
Was this always the concept for the game, or was there some spirited discussion at the very beginning about what you wanted to move forward on?
From the very beginning, well, I was still pitching the idea for the project. So the idea has existed for about 2 years now, and it just kind of evolves into what we have now. But it has stayed as it is. It's always been a game about being the other side of the horror genre, being the horror, essentially, again.
Well,
being the monster.
The good news is I was able to try the game.
Yeah.
You were there with me in the room, and let's take a look at how that went. Give us the 30-second pitch for the game.
Okay, yeah. So we're from Lagom Entertainment, and this is Remaining, which is a horror game where you are the horror.
It's high school.
Yeah, it is high. So instead of running away from the monsters, instead of trying to get scared, essentially, you are trying to scare other people.
So you want people to be able to enjoy the tension, but not be the victim of it,
yeah.
Basically. All right, very cool. Oh, but I'm fragile, so they will try to fight back.
They will try to fight back.
And there's not much I can do.
Not much. You can run away.
Okay. All right. Okay. So how shadow dash, force push. Okay. This is already not going well for me. Shit.
Yeah, there is some difficulty to the game.
Are the people not in the same place every time?
They move around.
They move around.
So.
Okay. So if I dash at him, does that do anything?
That'll give him a big scare.
If I hit him with it.
Yeah, but he'll also turn around and notice you.
Okay.
So that's not too recommended, but it's certainly a thing you can do when you built up his fear to give him a finishing move.
We're right all along. I'm so sorry, please.
That was hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It is
yeah.
hard game.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
That was fun. Okay, so I don't feel like I did a great job playing the game during the playtest. That is a tricky game. Watching me play the game and watching the video we saw just now, is that the experience you want? Are you happy with the idea that people are going to struggle and scaring someone and harvesting their fear is going to be, a really big deal? Or do you think that's something that needs to be adjusted a little bit?
Yeah, we worked a lot with experimental gameplay, where we want the player to experiment themselves to find the optimal way to try to scare them. So we don't want to do too much hand-holding. We want the player to try and get better. And each time maybe you die, then you can play again, try a new strategy. And every ability in the game is used in several ways. For example, we have a dash ability, which you can use either to scare them, because it makes sound, it can draw them to you, but you can also get away from them. So it's a lot about experimentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It is really hard as it is right now, and a lot of that just comes from that idea that we're kind of breaking the norm for both the stealth genre and the horror genre, because obviously we've turned around the horror genre, and in stealth games you often want to stay hidden, stay away from them, or just go forward to the NPCs and attack them somehow, either by assassinating or putting them down in other ways. And you don't really want to do either of these things here. You just want to stay away but still be influential, which is a hard concept to grasp for many players, I think.
So this is one of the games that I played of the 8 that I thought was very graphically impressive. It is a very nice looking game. And you have a lot of mechanics here. There are a lot of ways to set traps, a lot of ways to scare your victims. How did you fit everything together and still manage to make it look that good in a 10-week period? What's the secret sauce to everything coming together so well?
Basically, working graphically, often you have a crunch period at the end. Our graphical artists have crunched from the beginning. They worked 16, 17 hours a day from the get-go to make it look so beautiful as we possibly can. Mechanically speaking, this is still a strict version of the game we had imagined at the start, but this was the bare minimum we could fit in to make the game be fun and still challenging and still play well. So it's been hard.
What do you think when you have members of the team who are crunching like that, and maybe the rest of the team has a more manageable workload? Was there ever any bitterness? Did you stay up with them just out of sympathy?
Well, we've tried to stay up with them as much as we can when they have stayed in the school working. Often they've been working from home as well. But well, basically from the beginning they say we're going to work so much. You don't have to worry about us, and it's been hard, but especially for them. But I'm really impressed by that dedication that they have.
Did you think it was tricky knowing that there were members of the team who took it upon themselves to have that much of a workload?
It could have been a problem. It was worrying at the beginning when we don't really know each other that well. We don't know how hard are they actually gonna work. But we noticed very fast that they were producing very quickly and impressive. I did not expect this level of fidelity in the graphics from the start, so it blew my mind.
If you could, on a project this intense with so many moving parts, if you could go back in time from this moment to the very beginning of the project, the first day, what advice would you tell yourself?
Don't use wall climb. That's an ability that has taken a lot of time, a lot of balancing. So no wall climbs and no stairs.
Yeah, the stairs have been a problem too, because at the beginning we designed for it to be just one floor. And obviously now we have a staircase in the middle of the castle, and we don't really have a second floor. So we just have a small part, a small area where you can go up and then don't do much. But yeah, the wall climb definitely. It's been a lot of trouble getting that right for our programmers and for everyone to balance it correctly.
What about wall climbing is so difficult? That's one of those things that if you don't come from a development background, seems like it should be a fairly easy, you're walking up a wall. It's a graphical thing, just flip the world. I'm sure that's not the case, but can you describe a little bit about why that is such a tricky thing to implement?
Just an example, our graphical artists made pillars on the walls that stuck out. And then you need a transition from the flat wall to the pillar to go around that, to then go straight again in corners and everything, and it has to feel right. The game feel is very important. So at the beginning we didn't have the transition with the camera when you started wall climbing, and it just felt off. And when you are on the wall, you can't just go up the wall. You have to flip the camera perspective, how you look around and how it works. So it's been a lot of work there. And then what are the NPCs going to do when they see you in the roof? Are they going to get you down? Are you going to be hidden completely? A lot of those things came up during development.
It's not the wall climb in itself, I think it's the combination of the wall climb and everything else we have in the game that's been the hard work.
How tricky was it to create the AI for the NPCs? Because you have to balance the fact that they have to have a path that seems relatively natural. You have to be able to draw them towards you to scare them, and they have to counterattack and try to avoid you potentially if they get scared. How much time does it take to get a character who acts in a way that feels natural and not like a video game character?
We've been working now in 10 weeks, and they still don't feel 100% natural. A hard challenge for us was to analyze how fear is represented in a character, because most of the time you are the one being scared. Here you're scaring NPCs. Then we had to analyze what happens when you get scared and how to translate feelings to mechanics. How can we measure this fear? How will they react? How does their behavior change the further they get? It's been very hard and a lot of interlocking parts. This is a great system with many things. How are they going to react to these things? When they are more afraid, are they going to react differently? They are different characters, they react differently. It's a lot of work.
One of the things I thought was interesting about the game is once the character sees you, there's very little you can do. You don't have a real counterattack, and they will go straight at you and kill you. You're for a lurking horror in the shadows, you're a relatively fragile thing. Do you think that's something that worked, or do you think if you continue work on this, you want to add some kind of limited counterattack?
When we worked with that, we talked a lot about power and who possesses it. We talked about we wanted the humans and the NPCs to have the physical power. They have their armors, their weapons, and they are frightful in that power and that domain. But you have the psychological power. When you are in the shadows, when you are unnoticed, you are the powerful one. You try to trick and deceive and fool them and make them fear you, even though you are a weak creature. And that was kind of the idea.
How the theme of the project was inclusiveness. Walk us through how you put that into the game.
So our target group for this game is basically people who enjoy the theme of horror, people who enjoy watching horror movies, people who might like to watch Let's Plays on YouTube, but don't really feel comfortable with playing horror games themselves. So we try to target them and try to give them that experience and that feeling of the creepy darkness and all of that thing, all those things, but not really get scared themselves. And that's a hard balance to try for, but it's been really interesting to work with as well.
It's such an interesting look at that theme, because when people think about inclusiveness, I'm not sure my brain goes to how can we get people who don't like horror games to get into a horror game, but I mean, making a genre more welcoming to more players, I mean, what a great thing to do. Are you personally passionate about horror games? Is this a genre you really like, or?
Well, personally, I kind of fit into this target group as well, because I love horror. Horror is extremely fascinating, I think. It's a very interesting concept to enjoy getting scared, but I'm way too scared to actually do it. So sure, this is partly me just saying what would I want, but it's also seeing that target group, that there are many people who feel this way about horror, and that's something that I like working with, and that's yeah.
We talked about tricky things and we talked about the very brutal time crunch here. Is there something you ended up cutting that just really gutted you? Some really cool thing that you were in love with that unfortunately had to go to get the game in the 10 weeks?
I don't know about a very cool flashy thing perhaps, but something that I really wanted was to add the suspense to the horror and not just the scares. Because the suspense is such an important part of horror overall. It's the build-up for the big scare, and that's something we didn't have really time to implement in a good way. We have done it in a few ways, but we could do a lot more there, and I really think that would make the game so much better, and that's something that I really want.
And what do you think? Same question.
I agree in just the suspense, because horror is a lot about build-up and not just action. So it was something we wanted to have, to build up the fear slowly, making small noises and then creating something big to scare them more. It was something we tried working with, we had a few ideas, but didn't manage it in this time frame. So I'd say that's the worst part, yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for letting me play the game. I had a whole lot of fun, and it was neat playing a horror game and becoming the horror. We're going to take about a 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back with the 4 rest of the games. We will see you very soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Går det bra för honom? Nej. Det är ju rätt.
All right, and we are back from our break. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Ben Kachera, and I've been writing about video games for, gosh, over a decade now. I've spent 3 years at Polygon. Before that, I worked for Penny Arcade for 2 years. And before that, I was at Ars Technica for around 8 years. This is what I love to do. I love traveling to different places and seeing video games and learning more about the development of them and being able to talk to these groups of students and see what it's like to create a game in 10 weeks with these amazing teams and seeing them show them off for the first time and answer questions about it. It's just been an absolutely amazing experience, and we're gonna get back to it. And I'm super excited about this one. So here is the trailer for Whispers of the Ocean. And here we are. And can you introduce yourselves and your team?
Absolutely. My name is William Clifford. I'm the project leader for Whispers of the Ocean.
And my name is Josefin Nordin. I am the creative director for the project.
So it was a really interesting playtest, and we're going to see it here in just a second, but it is a game that deals with mermaids.
Yeah.
And I am wondering how many signs around your workspace just said no aerials for any reason. Don't do it.
Well,
yeah,
we just continued speaking about let's just not do Disney. Let's do the complete opposite. Let's break the stereotype about mermaids and what they are and create something different.
Like, were you scared of somehow falling into this sort of pop culture mermaid that we are so used to, or was there just such an effort to stay away from it that it was easy?
It wasn't that big of an issue, no. But we talked about it a lot. We thought about it a lot, and what colors to use, and what she should look like in order for us to make her different, and what colors would work with her, and blue and green and like so on. Sure. Yeah, instead of pink.
Well, I don't want to get to any spoiler warnings and talk about how much I enjoyed the game before we show the playtest, because I super enjoyed the game. So before we get to that and we dig in a little bit deeper, let's take a look at the playtest and how it went.
So we're from Waterproof Studios, and this is Whispers of the Ocean.
Oh, this is beautiful. What did you base the design of the mermaid on?
Well, we wanted to make a mermaid that was different from what we see in like Disney and so on, and we wanted to make her more mythological and more fish-like or sea creature-like. So. Okay,
what am I supposed to do to pick up?
Yeah, you pressed interact, and so she started to sing to the necklace.
Oh, okay.
And it opened up.
I have a terrible sense of direction, so be prepared for me not ever being able to find this temple.
Should I help you?
It might be helpful for expedience sake.
Okay.
Am I heading in the right direction?
Yeah,
okay,
you're supposed to swim down there.
The sound design is really good.
Yeah.
It sounds, I mean, even the music, the language, the way it just all fits together really well.
Nice.
So how much work went into the animations?
A lot.
Yeah. How hard was it just to figure out how a creature like that would move?
I think it was really hard. Throughout this project, we've been like working with trying to find the right what's it called, inspiration for the game.
Sure.
So we've been looking at other fish, how others have created mermaids, and it's been really cool to work with how you can move under in water, like for a game, because we haven't seen any mermaid games before. That's not like these pink dress-up games.
Sure, yeah.
So
probably of what I've seen so far, this one seems the most together, where all of the different elements are working together. It's immediately visually distinctive. It feels like it really has a strong sense of what it is. And I think that's super cool. And it was fun to play. Say that was a whole lot of fun.
Nice.
All right, yeah. Well done.
Thank God.
Thank you very much. I did enjoy that.
Nice.
So I'm always curious after playtests like that. I could tell everyone in the room was pleased that it went over well. But being so close to something for 10 weeks, did you know at the end that you had something that you were happy with, and did you feel confident going into the playtest, or was that a pleasant surprise?
Well, do you want to take that?
Sure, yes, absolutely. It was such a pleasant surprise. Just the week before, we didn't have anything except a grey box, really. So, I mean, the team we crunched every night, and we worked so hard, and I'm so proud of everyone in the team, and we really came through with something great. So, absolutely, we are so happy with what it actually became.
Yeah.
Same?
Yeah.
And I've heard that from even, relatively big name developers, is that you spend so much time getting things working, and then the game comes together right at the very end. And until that, you don't really know what you have. No. Were you prepared for that, or were you surprised by that sort of strange rhythm in the development cycle?
Well, we were very stressed out in the beginning of the last week. We had a map, we had a ton of rocks, and we needed plans, and we needed everything to work together, and we were kind of nervous at a point there about actually finishing the project, but we managed to do it, and I'm very happy we did.
So the theme was inclusiveness.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you're able to work that theme into your game?
Yeah, well, our target audience are the people that have grown up with watching movies and series about mermaids, and still kind of have an interest in them. And now that they're grown up, they want a game or something that is more about the mythological parts of mermaids. Those are interested in the stories where sirens and mermaids are these vicious creatures who want to lure people to their deaths and so on. So it's kind of a thing that we created for them, yeah.
So what did you go to in terms of research to try to tell another sort of story about mermaids? Where did you go for inspiration before, the mythological creature became so Disney-fied?
We searched far and wide for any sort of inspiration, and took a lot of inspiration from the old Greek mythology, sirens and so on. We also took a lot of inspiration from Disney as well, because they based their movies on the mythological approach in some sort of way, and we didn't really want to go too far from the knowable sort of mermaid. We wanted to have the connection between something new and mythological and the old sort of mermaid as well, so you had that connection, so it would be easier for you as a player to understand that these are actually mermaids and not something beast-like, but they are the mermaids. And for inspiration, we went to, as I said before, Greekish mythology, as well as the Disney movies and earlier projects that have been alike and such.
Now, the visual design for the character, she's bioluminescent, there's protuberances, it's a very different look for a mermaid than what we're used to. What kind of source material did you go to design that character? What aspects from were there things from real fish and undersea creatures that you incorporated? Just talk about the process.
Absolutely. We had a lot of mood boards, a lot of inspiration from different sorts of fishes under the water. So you have the, I don't remember the name, but the fish with the big light bulb hanging out in front of it.
Anglerfish.
Anglerfish,
at least
exactly.
in English, yeah.
Anglerfish. And that was an inspiration for the luminescent part of our character then. So we worked a lot with inspiration sources like that, and a lot of mood boards. I think we had like about 30 or maybe even 40 mood boards for our games.
Yeah, in order to get the right, like, the atmosphere, the colors, what other types of fish there would be in the map, the ruins, and yeah.
One of the things that I was struck by, normally it seems like we're supposed to feel like we are the protagonist of the game. And in this one, when I spun the camera around and looked at the design of the character, I almost found aspects of her scary. Like there's a little bit of an off-putting edge there. Was that something that you designed in and you wanted to come through visually?
Yeah, we wanted to make her powerful and a bit more of a sea creature rather than just a pretty human with a fin. And she was supposed to be this stronger and more vicious creature than we are. Known. Oh, yeah.
It also connects a bit with the story of the mermaids and the humans, and the mermaids have sort of been pushed down deeper into the sea, so they've grown a bit darker, more beast-like, but still they have the how do you say, the humanoid aspects still.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask, the armbands.
Yeah.
You're both wearing them. I thought for a moment that just one person had sprained their wrist, but no, you're both wearing them. What's going on with the armbands?
It's the way of us. We're one of the teams that didn't buy T-shirts, right? So we said we have to get something, and so to connect with the story, these are the tattered rags of the humans that have been slaughtered under the seas by the mermaids. And so we carry them.
This is one of the games that when I played, it really did feel like it knew exactly what it wanted to be. Does that surprise you, knowing what the development process was like? Were there any divisions about where to go? Was there always a very strong thrust in one direction?
No, very much not. It was such a difficult task to get everyone to have the same vision of the game. But we managed after about half the time. Then everyone had the same vision, because then we had something to work with, and we'd actually made something. So through making something out of nothing, we got something that would, well, turn into what it is now, and that clarified the vision for us.
I think what really helped us was that we continued to have discussions on what we wanted to do with the game and what we wanted to have in it and what we needed to take out of the game and the ideas and so on, because we had this really big idea and we needed to get it done in 10 weeks, so we needed to cut it a bit, yeah.
Now, did all of these discussions, did they stay civil? Did anyone ever need to take a break and maybe calm down a little bit?
We might have raised our voices once or twice, but it was okay, it worked.
People are really passionate about the project, so passion turns to, well, passionate arguments.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for letting me play the game.
Yes,
it was absolutely delightful. Thank you so much. And next up, we have the trailer for Decoy.
Peggy 7.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I've been calling like crazy, and where are you? I heard you went back to the factory, but please, just give me a call.
This is amazing.
Of the development team of Decoy, and I'm still feeling like I'm dancing from the music.
Nice.
That was very catchy. Can you introduce yourselves and say the name of your studio?
Turn this on for effect. Yeah.
Nice.
My name is Jonathan, and I'm the lead narrative designer for Decoy.
Yep. My name is Agner, and I'm the lead programmer for Decoy.
So as I talk to people going through this process, I'm really curious about how much discussion it took before you got to this concept. Were there a lot of people who had a lot of ideas? Was it easy to rally people behind this idea, or what was that process like in the very beginning?
All right. So we started this the initial pitch group for the project last summer. Then we went through a couple of ideas, had a couple that left, a couple that came on, but we never really got stuck on one idea. Then, about a month before the deadline, or before we had to present our pitch, we needed an idea. So we just brainstormed. I wasn't there for the final when we actually came up with the idea. But there were 3-4 of us that actually pitched the idea or came forth with the idea, and then we said, okay, this is good. So
all right, great.
It was just more of a brainstorming process.
I sat down and had a play test, and we are going to take a look at that and see how it went.
Yeah, the game is called Decoy. It's a fast-paced first-person runner, sort of. So you run and you teleport.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Oh, okay. But I can't go through things. It's only line of sight.
Oh yeah. The lag spikes are just loading in the next part of the level, sort of.
Okay. When it goes red, am I being shot?
Yeah. Oh no, they're targeting you, so they're locking onto you.
Okay. Shit. It looked like I had it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a hard room.
This is a hard room. Yeah. This is where we try and challenge the player.
I feel like when I'm hitting jump,
is it not responsive enough?
That that there's a little bit of a lag, maybe.
Yeah, it might be.
I mean, the good news is that it puts you back quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't. If there is even like a 2-second loading time, that would be real annoying.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's quick enough that I don't. Other than that tiny bit of frustration, I don't feel like it's punishing me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the concept seems sound, but again, until you fix those technical issues with the jump and the performance and the frame rate, it's really impossible for me to tell if it's good or not. When everything worked well, and every time I hit the button, I got the jump, and the game didn't freeze for a second so it could load, I was having a good time. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So this was the demo that was probably the trickiest for me. And the super good news is we just got done with another version of the game.
Yeah.
It was a whole lot of fun. A lot of the problems I was complaining about were fixed. But I have to ask, during that first playthrough with all of the technical issues, what went wrong? What were we experiencing with the input lag and the frame rate skips and the long pauses? What happened between yesterday and today?
Primarily hardware. But we've also been combating loading issues. We have a lot of objects in our scenes, so there's a lot of things that need to be loaded in each scene, as well as our game engine Unity doesn't really support scene loading in a smooth way in that way. So we made some revisions. The input lag you mentioned yesterday also was an issue we had noticed, but we hadn't playtested enough to really find the issue. We made a crunch yesterday, and really made sure the issues were fixed for today, so we could have a proper demonstration for everyone.
We found there were some balancing issues as well that we redid. This guy was up until like 6 in the morning, and developer life, and really we fixed a lot of the game feel. I don't know if you noticed it now, and if you didn't, that's good.
Yeah,
so.
it did feel like I was having a good time, and I was able to get that momentum and get the timing on the warp better, and to get that Mirror's Edge feeling, that really nice flow in. But like the flip side of that is, and this is the thing I'm going to say for the benefit of everyone else out there who might be watching this, if that were E3 or GDC,
we would be roadkill. You said
you would be toast, because you have hopefully you have that one opportunity to impress a big name streamer or someone in the press or someone who's going to write something up to get other people interested in the game. And if that was your day at PAX, or if that was your day at E3, it would be horrible. What did it feel like watching the playtest kind of fall apart a little bit?
Felt mortifying, to be honest. As the lead programmer, it really it stung. But as a developer, you have to take criticism with a stride, and I set out and I said, I'm going to fix this right now. So that's what I did. So for the exhibition, the real exhibition here, we made sure I made sure we had a product I was proud to display.
Well, like I said, when I played the game here, it was a ton of fun. Like that work really paid off, and it's super impressive to be able to see like a build that struggled in some ways and a build that's a whole lot of fun, and how quickly you're able to turn that around. And like luckily, this is the time to learn those lessons, right? Like this is a student project, and some lessons might be a little bit more painful than others, but you know, even though this isn't a public place, the stakes are at least a little bit lower than they would be in other circumstances.
We still feel it. We
feel
it.
Yeah. But it's super great to see how much work you're able to put in and how seriously you took it. And again, the game is just a whole lot of fun right now. So I hope everyone who's here gets a chance to play it. Now that we can set that aside a little bit, now that the issues have been fixed, I'm curious about what the trickiest part of developing a game where so much relies on the feel of the game and the player's momentum. Like how much iteration does it take before you get that right, where someone feels like they can string jumps together and get that you said you were inspired by the blink mechanic from Dishonored a little bit, to get all that working together.
I think the key word in your question there, the first part of it, was momentum. And one of the initial gameplay philosophies was that we were supposed to maintain flow constantly. So one of the keywords, or a pair of keywords, were never safe. So you'll find that actually changed during the development process. In the beginning it was never interrupt the player's flow, never let them stop, never let them feel safe. They might be safe, but they shouldn't feel it. And so when you played it now, you're talking about momentum, whereas we've seen some other players who are more inclined to play it as a sort of hide and stealth game. So they stop, they look, they take their time, they plan, and then they go. So I think it's achieved, this momentum is achieved by the fact that the music is there, always pounding away, sort of this drum and bass feel, and the lights, and you feel like a civilian in a war zone. So you always want to move forward, because you know at any moment maybe that turret that never swung your way is going to swing your way now. So it's all about having the player feel like they want to move rather than that they have to move. And the stealth thing is that there is cover, so it's not a stealth game, but you feel like you can stop if that's how you like to play games. You can stop. And some people don't discover that, but the ones that do, they stop, they plan, they check around, they peek. You did that too. And I think that's a lovely way of sort of summarizing the game. We thought of it differently, but now we realize that you can play it in so many contrasting ways. You know.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. There is a way to play that's slower and more measured, and when you do a blink, I don't know if it really came across in the footage we saw, but there's a version of you that stays behind, that pulls. It's almost like it's the name of the game. It's like the way I played, because I love that feeling of moving forward. I almost never used that mechanic.
You did, but you didn't realize.
Because it was drawing the fire back.
Yeah.
So was it always designed so you could play the two separate ways, or was it more of a happy accident that there were two very distinct ways of playing that both worked very well?
Well, Agner was talking about how they were an initial pitch team of 6. And I talked with Victor, who was one of our level designers, and he said that the very first idea he had before it became Decoy was as a stealth game, like a really stealth game. So it's shifted completely, and I think we always had the flow in mind, but we noticed early on, I might have mentioned this yesterday, that the way Agner plays is very different from the way I play. So I'm more cautious, less skilled perhaps, so I don't think that was ever in our minds until we noticed it. And then we realized we're not going to sort of balance for this, but it just works out. The way the level designers have designed the levels, it just works out naturally. And I think a lot of things in this game have come about naturally rather than by sort of a conscious decision until after we realized the process.
So it was a bunch of happy accidents that you just decided to hands off and leave it in the game.
The narrative happened like that too, in a way, because there was no narrative to begin with, and the narrative came about. I mean, the character's age, ethnicity, for example, the location of the game came about after the graphic artists wanted a specific setting around the main playable area. And we sort of built from that. It's a very organic development process, I would say.
So can you talk about how the theme of inclusiveness was folded into the game? What was that thought process like?
Do you deal with this? Do I deal with it?
I think you deal with this.
I deal with this. So I wasn't part of the initial pitch team. I joined the team later after they pitched it. And the inclusivity part of this is that, well, we wanted to include players who like action games or are drawn to action games but feel unable to play them. Either because there's so much to keep track of, like you have 50 different kinds of enemies, 10 different kinds of weapons, and you have special abilities and you can upgrade them, and you know. But what if you only have one ability and it's a thing you might be familiar with, but it has sort of a twist to it, which gives you a grace period of maneuvering. So you only need to keep track of one thing, and as you go through the game, there's no tutorial, but you can see what it's used for, and the whole design philosophy has been, first you learn about it, then you try it out, then you get to experiment with it, master it, and eventually you're finished with the game. Or the last one is sort of, I can use it in new ways, I can pick my paths. So there's this stair, if you will, where every step in the staircase teaches a player a new way to use this, in essence, very simple mechanic, simple feature. And that opens up for players who might find either that it's too difficult usually, or that they don't have time for it, like work, kids. I want to play Witcher right now, but I'm tired, and there are 15 quests, and I have to invest so much mental and emotional effort into it. But hey, this game is 15 minutes long, which was the idea from the beginning. So now you can play it.
So one of the things that we've talked about that's like blanket advice, even for things that aren't student projects, is cut. Lower the scope, keep things lean. Did you find yourself cutting things a lot, or did the concept start lean and just kind of stay very focused?
We added. Yeah, we added to the scope actually. We set out to create 50 minutes of gameplay. We have about 15 minutes of gameplay. We set out to create 6 different sections. An indoor for an intro and an outdoor section to introduce to the mechanics and so on and so forth. And we thought about cutting some outdoor areas or similar, but everything made it in actually, which is
except for section 4, part of section 4.
Part of section 4, but yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, it's still a tripartite level where you can choose your.
Yeah, it should have been a bit longer, but otherwise everything we set out to make was made.
Wonderful.
So,
well, I'm super glad I got to revisit the game, and I had a whole lot of fun with it. And again, like, what an amazing job you did in 24 hours of turning that around and giving everyone here a very good experience playing the game. So I don't know if I can shake your hand around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And if you want to learn more about, because there's very little narrative in the game, but there's a whole transmedial storytelling thing around it. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check it out. We have a blog, we had a sort of a Twitter feed by characters in the game and such. So there's a lot to process after you play the game, and there's material to do that if you want.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And next we are going to see the trailer for, I'm going to just destroy this name probably, Albjarkar.
Albjarkar. Exciting.
I feel like I came close.
Ég kaptein Jólarík. Ég njólifögur en berga gaufin og vadre vakta og nófal haf skjöldet æs få jötunar og flennen er riget an æs. Jeg grens knoen til mer. Jeg teida daglige. Albjarkar snjåla er i min hekan.
Okay, I mean, we're going to go to the obvious place first. How well did I do pronouncing the name of the game?
You did pretty well, I think, as well as one can do. We pronounce it Albjarkar.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you want to try it.
Swedish is pretty hard to pronounce if you're not so...
I'm actually curious, was there a discussion about naming the game something that would be tricky for other people to look at and see?
Actually...
And localize?
It kind of organically came from us naming it in a Swedish way. I guess every place in the world names it this way, but just naming the place after its landmarks. In this case, it was alder trees and birches, which in ancient Norse became Albjarkar. So we didn't intend to screw you.
And I'll just note that the name of the team is Northbound Games, and that is a very easy name to pronounce. So at least you kind of even things out at the end.
Yeah.
So before we get any further, I had a chance to play the game, and we're going to see how that went right now. So everyone enjoy. Well, first, go ahead and say the name of the studio and give us the 30-second pitch.
Okay, so we are Northbound Studios. We have made a game that is based on Norse culture, Norse mythology, and the game is based around environmental destruction. And you play as a little girl, Valdis, who goes out on a journey to help heal the forest of her home.
I don't have like an attack, do I?
No.
Okay.
So the thing with our character is that she can only heal things.
Oh, okay.
She can't physically fight the enemies, so you'll have to go around them and try to avoid them.
You are being hunted by a monster. This might not be the best time for exposition. Oh, shoot! So I've done everything you need to do in this area for now?
You have.
I'm gonna die. Oh, no! Okay.
I'm not too sure if you can hacks your way up there from here.
Okay, let me just head back then.
Yeah.
Now that I've healed that tree, the bad guys can't hurt me, right? Or can they still?
They just leave you be.
Oh, okay.
So they'll be jumping around, but they won't do anything to you. And that is the outro for our tiny little demo.
Very cool. Visually, it looks great. Overall, that was really well put together.
Thank you.
The voice acting, the music, just that it's very soothing. And
Thank you.
The whole thing where you can't attack, you can only heal, and it's nice seeing all of the different aspects of the game kind of underscore that point. So yeah, that worked very well. I appreciate
Thank you very much.
Demo.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things I thought was so interesting about the game is, as the protagonist, you have no attack. Like, your interaction is to heal, not hurt anything. Was that something that you wanted to focus on from the beginning? Was that added in? When did that come into the development process?
It was from the very beginning of the game production. The healing mechanic just didn't came to be for maybe 2 weeks, because from the beginning it was supposed to be like a puzzle game, for example like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, where you push certain blocks or trying to solve environmental puzzles. But later, when we started to research about the game and how we are going to make this game have more personality, we looked how in the real world, how we are trying to solve environmental destruction. Like, you don't push any blocks to like, oh no, the nature is good. No, in real world, in our real world, when we are trying to save our planet, we are trying to restore areas that it's damaged. So that how
the healing mechanics, it feels natural because you nurture nature. You don't punch it to make it good again.
So once you knew that you were going to make a game where your interaction was to heal, where it was to nurture, where you were not going to attack, what else did you do in the world to underscore that point? How did that change the design of the visuals and the music moving forward?
I think the biggest thing was probably the trees, the corrupted trees, because we needed an obvious marker to show the player that this is wrong. And we didn't have that from the start. We wanted to have very complex, subtle details, but we ended up with smoky, corrupted trees. So that's the biggest change, I would say.
One of the things I was a little bit frustrated with the game was I found the jumps a little bit floaty. And there was a little bit of a hitch oftentimes when you would catch like the edge of a structure, and I was able to do a few really nice series of jumps in the game when in a very stressful situation. But overall, there were some issues there. And I think jumping systems are something that players take completely for granted until they don't work. And then it becomes like the most obvious thing. So how much work does go into making a jumping system, even just onto the ledge of something, feel satisfying to the player?
It's a lot, because I think it's part programmer and part designer. The programmers need to create like an appealing movement system and make the jump feel natural and not too long, not too short. And our designers try to place out the colliders, the hitboxes, in good places to match up with the rocks, which was a huge challenge. So it was difficult.
Yeah, we tried to make it as organic as we could, yeah, but we had some limitations. But if we are going to develop it further in the future, it's absolutely something that we are going to take in note when we are trying to develop it further, so it becomes more organic and more satisfying. And it is very hard, and when we started to learn about the development of games, when you start as a player and then you start to learn how to develop games, you do quickly understand that easy and fluent movements is something that we as players take for granted. So definitely, yeah, it's been a challenge.
One of the things that I really did enjoy about the game was the music was soothing, the visuals, you're in nature and there's this beautiful mix of colors, and even the little girl's voice is so calming. So I wanted to know, what was the biggest fight the team had behind the scenes? Was the development of the game as soothing as the final product? I want to know if that calm went all the way down or if it was a maelstrom right under the surface.
It wasn't too chaotic, but it wasn't completely innocent either. We had a pretty vivid discussion, I guess, a while ago, because some people didn't feel like the lake, for example, gave us the right feeling because it felt so soothing. But that place is supposed to represent the corrupt part that nature has created. Nature is defending itself. It's trying to push away humans. So there was definitely some conflict in there. Nothing serious, but we had some differences.
So what's the strategy when there is such a such a big disconnect between what two people think, or multiple people think, the game should be like, or a scene should be like. How did you make sure that things stayed as harmonious as possible?
Talk with each other, definitely. Have a communication is super duper important when you are in a. We are a pretty big team. Also, we're like 20 people, and having a connection and everyone is on the same note on what is going on in the game is very hard when you're a great team. So I respect the greater team like AAA studios like Ubisoft, and they have such a big, huge team behind a game and having the same vision. It's very it's challenging, but it's definitely something that you need to have a great connection, communication with each other, and trying to solve problems by talking with each other.
I think what we did too was to try to acknowledge the authorities that were there, the creative director and the project leader, so we don't become this group of individuals that all need to agree.
So I think this is one of my favorite questions to ask about these projects, and I've asked it for a few other teams. If you could go back in time to the first day of the project, what advice would you like to give yourself about what's going to be happening in the next 10 weeks?
Be not afraid of conflicts. It's if you feel something is wrong and you do not agree with someone, you definitely need to talk about it and speak up. And I think I would give myself that advice to actually speak up my mind and be honest more about my feelings, how I feel about the project, because it's very important, especially for the leaders, to know how we others feel. And
for the group in general, so we have a cohesive image or vision of the game.
Was that something that didn't happen at first, that you kind of had to get everyone used to speaking up and sticking up for their ideas?
Definitely. After we had kind of, after 5 weeks, we started to pull our shit together and get everything
we had
done.
several meetings to get together.
And I think after we had a talk about having a more clear vision, and we must communicate it with each other much better. And after that, the production went fluently very well after that. So definitely communication. Be not afraid of talking with each other. Be honest and with your feelings.
One of the things we've talked about a lot is, especially in the 10-week period, is managing scope, of cutting relentlessly and making sure you have that focus thing that you can execute on. I'm going to ask the question in the other direction.
Okay.
Is there something you didn't cut that now that you have the final product, you think you should have?
No, actually.
I think we cut way more than we should have. Or maybe we cut a lot, so there's... No, I don't think so, actually.
Okay, great.
So, I don't know if you...
No, like we got the gameplay mechanic that we said, okay, this is what we need in a game. So everything that we planned for need in our game,
we got the core.
We got it in our game. So I think it's more the opposite, that we wanted so much more with it. Like we narrative designers had so much plan over the story and how the story arc would go and the drama and everything. So it's more disappointing that we couldn't have more time for making the game bigger and greater.
Okay. Well, I think those are all my questions. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for letting me play your game. Absolutely. And we're going to go straight into the trailer for Traveler next. Okay, great. So we are here to talk about Traveler. Can you two introduce yourselves and say the name of the studio?
Yeah, my name is Christopher. I am project leader and the designer.
And my name is Tekla, and I am lead designer and animator.
So the group is called Bag of Peaches.
Yes.
Where did that name come from?
We are. Maybe you should take that.
Should I take that? Yeah.
Story. Yeah.
Our story is loosely based on a Chinese folk tale called Journey to the West, and it's a story about greed and punishment and reincarnation and immortality. And in that story, there's a story about peaches of immortality growing on a tree, which is what our adventurer is searching for in our game Traveler.
And that story, Journey to the West, it's been done in pop culture many times.
Yeah.
Can you give some other examples of work that was influenced by it?
This is mainly our narrative designers or game writers.
Okay.
And I have been working on. I think they were mainly influenced by the original tale.
Yes.
Actually. I think there's also like film adaptations and series and stuff like that.
But it's mainly the 400-year-old tale. It's translated something to the Monkey Boy or something in English, I think. But the original story is Journey to the West. But we're also inspired by games such as Journey and also a little bit of Prince of Persia.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I got a chance to play the game.
Yes.
And we are going to take a look at how that went. Go
Yes.
ahead and tell us the name of the studio and give me the 20-second pitch for the game.
This is Traveler by Bag of Peaches, and you play as an adventurer seeking immortality in an ancient ruin.
Okay. You said something about red pillars, so I was like, is that the red pillar?
Oh yeah, that might be confusing. Sorry about that.
No, you're okay. I know there's stairs right next to me. I'm going the hardest possible way.
Why? It's the fun way.
It is, yeah.
I do that every time I play testers. And you drag the mouse.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Oh, that's nice.
You like that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's gives me like the Magneto effect. You feel powerful.
Yeah.
Shit.
Oh.
And I jumped short.
That's okay. You have a second. Oh, that was clutch. Damn. You got some use for the air controls.
Yeah.
Right, you're closing in on the end.
Oh, shit.
And that was the end of the demo.
Nice. Strong finish. That was a whole lot of fun.
Great.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for playing our game.
I really appreciate it. Do you have time to do game testing on this stuff? Do you bring other players in to try it?
Yes, we do, and especially a lot of beginners. We also send out the demo to the public and ask them for their opinion.
Yeah.
And that's good because you get more shit talking.
Yeah.
Like because they are honest.
Right. Because they don't have to face you.
Yeah.
Like they can just say whatever the hell they want in that situation.
They can sit in their chair at home and just talk crap about our game all they want in our form that we sent with it. So that was a great one. Gave a lot of results actually.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Right, well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Right. So this is one of the games I had a whole lot of fun with. This was super enjoyable. And just so much of it, from the tiny graphical flourishes to how well it controlled to the sense of power the character has. And when I asked about that earlier, like the answer of how you're able to do that in 10 weeks was basically just a lack of sleep.
Yeah. We had a lot of crunches, yeah.
Yeah.
We were crunching a lot, which means basically that we were working overtime. We had one day we worked 23 hours straight, some of us, to get things done for the Swedish Game Awards, and also another competition. And crunching gives a lot.
Crunching as a team.
Yes.
We crunched together, we helped each other out, and it was a lot of fun, actually, to make the game.
It is a lot of fun. That's why we do it.
But you're also, okay, like, for all I know, you're just really good-looking 40-year-olds. But, but you seem younger, and it's like crunching is fun. And I'm just imagining, like, from my point of view, crunching is like always such a controversial thing in the industry. And that exhaustion does catch up with you as you have more games under your belt, and like
maybe
But the other aspect of it is it worked.
Yeah,
Like
it did.
you came up with this very polished, very high quality thing. So did that change how you look at crunching? Did you always know that we're going to attack this and really put a lot of hours into it?
We didn't crunch as much in the beginning of the project, actually. At the midway point, we really changed our focus for the better. We made our main game element, the dragging of the pillars, we made that our main focus, and that really put us together as a group.
Yes.
And that made us want to work harder. And as we worked harder, of course it got tougher, but it's not a long project. It's 10 weeks long, and after the midway point, it was 5 weeks left of the project. So with that time, us crunching and seeing in the end what our product had become made us want to work that much harder. Like we're super psyched about this project now.
Yeah, we are.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about the game was the sense of power you have as a character when you're moving these pillars. And there's this great animation, and the sound design works with it.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing in terms of like, and I use this term a lot and I think it's often abused, game feel is impossible to kind of describe, but you know when it's wrong.
Yes.
So how much iteration goes into getting something like that right? How do you know when it feels that good for the player?
It's a lot of iteration and a lot of play testing, both internally and externally. We wanted to make this mechanic that moving the pillars was like the focus of the entire game. And we wanted it to be fun, it should feel good, and we did a lot of iterations on it. Yeah.
And actually the animations were, us animators worked really tight with the programmers to really get that feel of the animations working smoothly in the engine. So that worked well. I recommend it. Work with programmers. Yeah.
One of the things we talked about earlier was that the animations were inspired by The Last Airbender.
Yes, they are.
When you were looking for how you wanted this character to act, when they were moving the pillars, what other source material did you look at? Like, how do you go to YouTube and do a search for moving stuff with your mind inspiration? Were there other things you were tempted to use as a jumping off point?
We looked a lot at just magic movements, like in Skyrim. But we couldn't really find what felt right because there's not a lot of hand moving in Magic. It's mostly moving your hands like this. So to really get that feel of power, the Last Airbender worked really well with because they move their whole body with the movements, with the pillars, and we wanted it to feel like you are the pillar.
We wanted the objects to feel really heavy, like the character had to struggle to move them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we succeeded with that.
Yeah.
It seems like you talk about everyone crunching as a team, you talk about the strong focus, it obviously shows in the final product. What was the absolute hardest decision you had to make as a team in the process of creating this game?
That must have been halfway through the process, as we talked about before. We didn't have a clear focus before that, but we sat down, we discussed the game, and we came up with a focus, and we made the game a lot better and a lot more fun to play. And after that, it was rather smooth sailing, but harsh weather, so to speak.
Yeah, we had, before that, we did not have a focus as a team. But the focus change also meant we had to move a lot of parts around and discard so many stuff. Such a large change for the whole project. So that was kind of hard to grasp emotionally. Like, we've done all this, but we have to just put it away and make something new for the project.
But how do you, in the process of developing a game, how do you catch that? Like, who sat down and went, this is unfocused. We need to all come together. What is the process like of realizing that it's kind of going in different directions and you don't have your hands around it as strongly as you need to?
It's hard at first. It's really hard. But when you get feedback is really important. When you get feedback and the feedback seems to indicate that perhaps you're not going in the direction you should, then you just have to grasp it and sit down with the whole team. We did this. We had a long meeting. Meetings are boring, but they are useful as heck. And we had a long meeting about this, and it turned out much better. So just grasping these hardships and discussing them helps.
Also, the feedback from our teachers
Yes.
was very valuable. When we had the midway point presentation, we got to talk to a panel of experts telling us like there's something wrong with our game. That made us have to look at it from another point of view.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And we claimed our focus on the pillars, and it made it better.
What is, you talked about in that middle point having to refocus things and having to cut a lot out. What was the hardest thing to cut? What is that thing that you lost that just, how you were really hoping to get in there?
I think the speed, it was a lot faster before. But since we tried to design the game so that even new players to the genre of puzzle platforming should be able to sit down and play it, as long as they've ever touched a keyboard before.
But it was a lot more like platformy before.
Yes,
yeah,
in speeds.
jumping really fast, no puzzles
Yes,
really.
it felt good for us to do that, but it didn't feel good for the players, and that's why we had to cut it.
So, what is it like after all of that hard work and all of the issues you had and the amount of time you put into it to see people play it and enjoy it and to have nice things being said about the game?
It's fantastic.
It feels amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
It's so great. I mean, you feel like you did the right choice in the end, and that's what really matters.
Seeing you play it as well, it was a great turning point for our team. Everyone was really worried, like, oh my gosh.
It's a great boost, to the self-confidence.
Yeah.
And before that, did you do playtests with people who were coming in cold? Like, did you feel confident that you had something you were proud of, or was there still a question of you're too close to it to see whether it's good or not?
We did a lot of early playtests, and then it felt more like we weren't quite there with what we were trying to achieve. But later playtests have been a greater success, and as the project went on, it got better and better. We did a lot of playtesting, both from beginners and game developers and skilled players within the genre to get all sorts of feedback and try to adapt what we felt were necessary.
I'm curious if there was anything during playtesting that really surprised you, that you didn't see coming.
The difficulty of the puzzles, I think.
Yeah. Because we're so used to playing them,
Yeah.
over and over again. Like
you get blind as a game
think
developer.
They're easy now. Like,
You do.
And I struggled with the puzzles a little bit during the playtest. Like, how long, when you're standing behind the player, how long do you think you should let them go before stepping in? Or is it your responsibility to stay completely out? Because it's not like you're going to be there if they were to purchase one of your games.
It's absolutely, when playtesting, it's our job to try to stay out of it as long as possible. If the playtester seems to be, aggravated, you can ask if they want a little help, but you should never help the playtester unless they say they want to. You can ask them, but it's for the greater good. You get a lot more out of playtests that way.
You want them to fail as well, because we want to see what's wrong with the game. So
it's painful.
we let them fail, and you really do want to step in, though.
It is really painful to see someone not understanding your game or not understanding your puzzle or how things work. And it makes you realize what you need to do to make it better, or that you have at least to find something to make it better or more clearly.
Well, wonderful. Those are all my questions. I really appreciate the time I got to spend with the game.
Thank you.
And thank
very
you so
much
much for spending. Oh my God.
Yes, with Travi too.
That's amazing. I don't know, like, when do you find time to make merch through all this?
This is all our game writer. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she did this one last night, actually.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
I know, we were as surprised as you are.
Super cool.
Yeah, I can hold on. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been just an absolutely amazing process. It's the first time I've ever been to Sweden, the first time I've ever had a chance to demo games made by students in such a short amount of time, and it's fascinating to see what you can do in 10 weeks and the troubles you bump into. And for them, I have to imagine it's been this amazing learning experience, and just for me, talking to them and seeing what comes out of it and seeing the trouble they had and how they solved it, I've learned so much just being here about the game development process, and I've gotten insights I probably wouldn't have been able to get any other way. So this has been just such a great time. I want to thank all of the teams and everyone who graciously shared their games and talked me through them. And thank you so much for joining us and for sending in your thoughts and questions. And we hope to talk with you real soon. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day.